Earth is home to many creatures. Some may even consider a few of them monsters. But what of those more elusive and hidden creatures? The ones we just can't seem to find. Welcome to Monday Morning Monsters. Cryptozoologist and paranormal researcher Barnaby Jones talks about the unknown, mythical, undiscovered, and unidentified creatures from around the world, and the people who have seen them, look for them, and research them. Hear from witnesses about their encounters, as well as renowned names in the field about their work and research. Barnaby is the founder and lead investigator for Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society based in Wisconsin. Caps travels across Wisconsin and beyond looking for connections between different phenomena and how they can all be connected. Now, your host of Monday Morning Monsters, Barnaby Jones.
Good morning, monsters. It is another lovely day here in Wisconsin. I want to get right into our show today. We had a slight change. Unfortunately, our guest this week, Kenny Irish, could not make it, but I think that I have got you something even better. Today, we have some of the cast from the new Travel Channel series, the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. And these guys are out there roughing it, and, a lot of credit to them. I mean, not just for being out in this, wilderness area, but these guys have a very poor internet signal. So hopefully these guys are good to go for today, and they found themselves a nice little internet cafe, and we can have a great show here. So just be warned of that ahead of time. But without any further ado, I mean, our first guest here is one of the guy who did a lot of the history of Portlock and a lot of the research for the show and helped those guys out with the history of the area. Jeff Davis, how are you doing?
I am doing great, Barnaby. How are you?
Good. Glad to have you on here. I know you were just on Paranormal Pete's show a couple weeks ago, and I got to check that out, and you had some problems with your internet. So
hopefully we'll do better this time.
Good. Awesome. I mean, it is a very wilderness, wild area out there to begin with, and then you're trying to stay. Where are you at, by the way?
Well, believe it or not, I actually, my home base is in Washington State, but I live in the foothills of the Cascades. So yes, I actually have terrible signal at my house. And so I've actually driven down off the mountain, and I'm at my nephew's gaming store.
Oh, very cool.
Hence the dragons in the background.
Oh, I thought you just really like dragons.
I do.
Okay.
If I could broadcast from my house, I'd have a suit of armor in the background.
Nice. Really cool. I used to have some of them as well. I used to own a haunted house attraction, and I had two big suits of armor for the castle scene, but I don't have them anymore. That's what I need back here.
Isn't that the thing is all of a sudden what was precious turns into I have to feed myself, so there goes the armor, the sword, everything else like that. Or my wife doesn't like it anymore. She gets creeped out by it, so there goes the skull.
Yeah, that's the way things go, man. Our other guest here is also from the show. He was one of the guys out there on the beach roughing it and having a go of it. Our next guest, Ash Naderhoff, correct?
Yes, perfectly said. Thank you so much for having us.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll start with Jeff here. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of, what's the premise of the show? What's going on up there?
Sure. Really the premise of the show, and this is the thread that runs through every episode, is the guys were not in the town side of Portlock just to hunt Nantinak, to hunt the Bigfoot. They're there because because that piece of land is owned by, for want of a better word, the tribal corporation, and that is where a majority of them live. Their ancestors lived, especially in the early 20th century, and they were driven out of town by these forces, and 70 years later they want to come back. And so that is why they're there, is they're investigating to see whether or not it's safe, or is it livable to go back, and can they make a living. It used to be a very prosperous fishing cannery town, and so that's really what it is it's resurveying and everything they're encountering, and everything flows from that.
Cool. So Nash, you actually were out there, and you're from the village that was looking to expand out there again, right?
So I lived there for about half a decade. Not originally from there. I'm not native. Keith, DJ, and Guy were the native cast out there. I've hung out with them for years. I've hung out with the elders, listened to stories, done a lot of research, but myself, I am not native.
Okay. Very cool. But you did live in, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the village that they were from.
Nanwalek.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you were living there for a little while, like 5 years or so prior to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. So, we have this whole show based on, this killer Bigfoot up there. And Jeff, so there's more to the story of Portlock and that than just, what we're seeing on the show. It's not just that one thing happened. Like, there was a lot of different settlements and everything that came before the villagers got chased out. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. I am more of an expert on the written history, as if we were able to have the other cast members out, and I'm sure Ash would be nodding his head. All of these non-written traditions on the part of the elders and the people, we are exploring these as we go too. But I took on part of the slice of the written history, and in some cases, some of the anthropology. The anthropologists show up and periodically, and they will do interviews, and they'll publish the interviews. So that's where I'm coming from on this. The archaeology of the area around Portlock suggests that there were as many as 6 different human occupations going backward in time of what we know as Portlock. And it would be periodically, there would be people living there. It seemed to be a prosperous life. And then something would happen and the site would be abandoned for a generation or more, and then it would be reoccupied. We come on to the more of the written records. There were Spanish and English expeditions that came by. This is off the Kenai Peninsula, and in a couple of cases, they actually made landfall and laid claim to essentially Portlock, that portion of Alaska, for the King of Spain, as well as for the King of England. And that happened in the 1780s. And so it is this really interesting intersection where you can point to this piece of land at Portlock and say, yes, Bazan, the Spanish explorer, he landed in this bay. And a couple of years later, Nathaniel Portlock landed, and they both laid claim to the land. And this is one of the thoughts behind maybe especially the Spanish expedition. When they laid claim, they may well have stirred up the natural forces on the landscape, because the Spanish ceremony, the taking ceremony, and their attitude about claiming a land was very totalitarian, and really at other times I have actually read the whole document that they themselves, starting from the 1500s, would read out to the natives. Mm-hmm. And imagine if they didn't have a translator, they would read it in Spanish, and then the native people would probably be standing saying, what do they say? Mm-hmm. The gist of it is these people, the native people, were expected to convert to Catholicism, to obey implicitly every single command coming from the monarchy of Spain, but also the priests and also the soldiers who were sent to this part of the world to enforce these claims. And if they rebelled or disobeyed, the men would be killed, the women and children would be sold into slavery, the land would be decimated. Very, how do I say, very biblical wrath of God kind of stuff, what they would bring down. And so some people think that whole attitude behind it reactivated whatever was whatever energy was there on the land. And see, when they landed, both the Spaniards and Portlock, there were signs of a habitation, but it was already abandoned. And so when the Spaniards also landed, there was an outbreak of scurvy, and within days, 7 sailors had died. And so it's pretty coincidental that you make landfall where you now have access to fresher foods, and yet this happens to them. And I'm kind of pausing a little bit because I'm starting to kind of run on. Sorry about that.
No, you're right. So the basic gist of it is, you have all these different things like that had happened there. I don't want to get too far ahead because I know, excuse me, I know that I actually watched this on Discovery Plus. So I've seen all the episodes already. I watched it, I think like right after it had premiered on there. So I've watched it quite a while ago and stuff. But right now it is airing on Travel Channel weekly. So anybody that's out there that is watching this that doesn't have Discovery Plus, you're watching it for the first time, and that I don't want to get ahead of where the whole storyline is going and everything. I did check out the episode that just aired. Was it last night? I think. So I know the one where you're at. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But yeah, it's awesome. It's very interesting. Ash, I wanted to ask you, when you were getting ready to go out to Portlock, you've heard these stories of Nantinuk and this creature out there. Did you do any research on Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Nantinuk? Did you know anything about like what you were getting into as far as that prior to going out there?
I've never watched a Bigfoot show before. I mean, I've seen an episode or two of like some random thing like 5 years ago. I've never been like a Bigfoot investigator or researcher. I've seen some really crazy, and I would even go as far as say supernatural things living in Namwalik. I know that there's something to this. I've been talking with the elders for years, hearing the stories, firsthand, secondhand encounters. So I definitely know there's something to it, but something that a lot of people don't realize is that term that you just used, Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. The first time we heard that was about a week before the show aired. We shot the show under Portlock. Contracts were signed under Portlock. When people said, "What are you guys working on?" We're working on a show called Portlock. The show was always called Portlock. Our mission, our goal was to go out there to resettle the town of Portlock to see if we can make it inhabitable again. We knew stories of old. We knew things had been happening. We'd heard all these different things from the elders. We didn't know what we were going to encounter when we went out there. So people were like, "Why didn't you have this? Why didn't you have this?" We were going out there shooting Portlock. We were out there to find where a good spot to put houses would be, to find where the old church was, to find where the old school was. We expected to encounter bears and moose and wolves and like all these types of things, and maybe like hear some knocks and whistles like we did in the village. We never expected when we stepped foot on the land to have so many different, I don't know, entities or the best way of saying it, to totally take notice and be following us around and interacting with us for over a month at a time. I mean, in episode 5, there was an encounter where I had over 20 minutes encounter. I mean, balls of lights and chains being drugged, things whispered in my ears. I mean, the most supernatural encounter that anyone could really ever imagine. And it went on for 20 minutes straight. It's not just like, whoa, that was a quick flash. Did I see that right? I mean, it's just happening. And I have a camera rolling the whole time. So, I mean, what we experienced out there, how it became called Alaskan Killer Bigfoot is pretty obvious, but it wasn't the show originally shot. It wasn't the original premise and thought of the show. So there's so much incredible history out there. Going back to the 1700s and before. Jeff and I were just talking last night. We did a little Facebook Live thing together, and we were talking about newspaper articles in like the 1800s, like down in San Francisco. Like these people said, it could have been a serial killer, could have been a hoax, could have been these different things. So we'll dive into these different theories from top to bottom, going through them and just completely, I mean, say, is it a serial killer? Well, it could have been a serial killer that lived there in the 1700s, the 1800s, the 1900s, now the 2000s. This guy's over 400 years old. He really hates people out there. So now he Amazons stuff in, because all the supernatural stuff we're experiencing, he has to be able to have all these cool light things and projectors and electricity out there to run it all. It makes no sense. There's no way a serial killer holds any credence in any way, shape, or form. And then a hoax. Well, a hoax is the other thing we hear a lot. Well, once again, the hoax started in the 1600s. It drove people out in the 1700s. It drove people out in the 1800s. 6 times this land's been abandoned. We are not the first people to encounter supernatural stuff out there. What we are is the first people in 70 years to go out there and take modern cameras and recording equipment and stuff with us. So there's the really long answer to your question.
Oh, no, that's great. I actually was going to ask how the show actually came about. If it was supposed to be, like you said, that you were going out there to find Bigfoot, or if, it was obviously the premise of the show is resettling Portlock. But I didn't know if it was pitched as we're going to go look for Bigfoot, or if it was pitched as we're just going to document your, looking for this stuff. Do you know at like what point it kind of switched, or did it switch for you being there, or like you said, was it just when they produced it at the end?
So Portlock's only about, I'm going to guess, don't quote me on this, 15 to 20 nautical miles from Namwalik. When Portlock was attacked and abandoned the last time in 49, the people just moved up the coast to current Namwalik, and it's not that far. So a lot of weird supernatural stuff still happens in Namwalik. There's still sightings of Bigfoot, nothing extremely hostile. I've personally had rocks thrown at me in the woods in Namwalik and seen a lot of crazy different things, but nothing hostile like we saw in Portlock. So when we went out, Discovery has been saying for a long time, if you guys ever go out there, we want to tag along, we want to tag along. So finally, we're like, look, we're a bunch of salty Alaskans. We're not going to memorize a script. We're not going to come around. We're not going to make fake footprints and cast them. We're not going to chase some dude in a suit around the woods, Like, we're a bunch of salty dudes who are out here to do a job. If you guys want to follow around with your camera crew, that's fine. If you start telling us all the stupid stuff, we can tell us to shove it up your butt and to leave, because it's just not who we are in any way, shape, or form. So it's a slightly different show, because we knew it was 75% of us going out there to resettle, and probably we knew we were going to have to cover a little bit of Bigfoot stuff, because there's no way to tell the story of Portlock without talking about Bigfoot. So what we were expecting is to tell a lot of stories, to have a lot of elders tell stories of what had happened in the past. We didn't expect for it to be happening to us currently as we were out there.
And if I could add, Ash maintains the fan page on Facebook for Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, 11,500 fans now. Yeah. And I've been trying to kind of volunteer work to get our fan base mobilized, to let Discovery Channel know we have a lot of dedicated fans. And so I've been soliciting and asking people who are fans of the show to go on imdb.com, which is where all the metrics from that are what Showbiz use to evaluate shows. And in reading some of the ratings, I found it kind of amusing in that they don't use the word cast. Some of the people use the word actors, and I found it kind of funny that in some cases they said, well, the rater has written the actors are so bad that they're kind of stuttering and they're not remembering their lines. Because there are no lines, people naturally, when they're talking, do actually stutter subliminally as they're going from thought to thought. It's I only live met Ash and Keith and some of the crew members, and everybody's very real, and so I just have to reinforce that.
I was a youth pastor for a long time. My credibility means a whole lot more to me than producing some show. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of money in TV. A lot of us ended up losing money doing the show because we had to miss so much work. We didn't do it for that. I mean, the ratings are cool. We love that people watch it, but we didn't make it for ratings. I mean, we're not a bunch of TV people. Of course we want a season 2. We want to tell the story of the village and stuff, but we're not out there for ratings. We're not out there for that stuff in any way, shape, or form. we're out there doing what we do, and we were fortunate enough to have a camera crew follow us around. So that makes it a pretty unique experience. And I was a youth pastor for a long time. One thing that bugs me is well, we were walking around, and this one time we is a verbal pause, and it drives me mad. And I'll say it sometimes, and when I say it throws my entire thought process off, and I really lose my train of thought. So a lot of times when I do take a break, I'm purposely not umming. I'm trying to think of what to say next, because when you're out there talking with a bunch of dudes live and you say something completely off the wall or stupid, well, it disrails the whole thing. Or like, because there is no script to it, or a lot of times, a lot of people, it is still TV. So if I'm out there, I'm walking a few feet away from the guys, and I come up and I'll just say, I find it wasn't, was one cool thing we found, the bridge. Like, oh my gosh, this bridge is incredible, guys! Look, we found the bridge! Holy crap! Well, the camera guys are carrying big cameras and backpacks. Sometimes they're a few feet back. So we're all, oh my gosh, look at this! There's spikes in here. There's this. This is incredible. Kyle looks at DJ's like, oh my god, this is cool. And we're like, let's run across it. No, we'll die. Blah blah blah. And then the camera crew catches up, like, hey, what'd you guys find? We're like, oh yeah, we found this bridge. And they're like, cool, can you show some enthusiasm? I'm like, yeah, we just did for like 15 minutes when we found the bridge. And they're like, cool, the cameras are here and set up. Now we need you guys to like show people the bridge. So we're like, wow, look, a bridge. You know, because we're not actors. We already did it. Like, how do you read off that original? So that's a part where I think some people do kind of notice that there is no acting there, or would consider it bad, because there's, how do you reintroduce something that you already naturally did? So we would get a little bit of a loss at some of those times. We're like, I don't know how to do that. Yeah.
But if I could add too, Ash and everybody on the fan page, there's an amazing number of behind the scenes photographs, and thanks to Ash and everybody else for posting them, where you actually get to kind of see. You get to see the camera crew in several of the shots. And so that is unusual for a lot of these television shows. I've been on a couple of them because I am a historian, and I'm not afraid to go on camera and talk about the odd and unusual. And so there's just so much enthusiasm. The dynamic behind everything is really exciting to me too.
You know, we talked to Travel and Discovery right ahead of time. Said we're not going to go in, we're not going to hide stuff, we're going to go on and go live. We're going to answer any question anybody asks. It doesn't matter what it is. We're not a bunch of fake dudes. We're not going to try to, did Keith say this? Did Brian say that? And if he did that, I have to remember that and build off of. We'll just tell it as it happens, and that's all we can do. And it just was such a crazy, unique experience that we understand it's going to be hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains around. When you start talking about Bigfoot and quantum physics and all these different things, you're if the camera wasn't rolling, I wouldn't tell anybody what happened out there. There is no way I would come back and be like, oh my gosh, I was sitting out there in this tree stand, and I started like carrying these chains dragged around. Someone was like shaking this tree I was in. And I came down, and I was like sitting at the base of this tree, and this pulse of energy was coming through me, and these balls of lights in the air, and people would be like, woohoo, you know, insane asylum. Well, what we've done is we've been able to capture this audio because we were out there. The military is looking at our audio. Universities are looking at the audio. Like, how crazy is that? That like I was able to capture one of the first paranormal recordings in the last who knows how many years that the military is currently checking out. Like, the stuff that we were able to capture is so cool. We're just so excited about that. We love coming on and talking about it because it was such a crazy, cool, unique experience. And one of my favorite things about the show is it tells a native side of the story. You always see like the same blah, blah, bunch of white dudes coming out, and they have the most expensive blah, blah they can have. This is telling the story that's went on since like the 1700s. We're showing pictures of some of Keith and DJ and Guy's ancestors that I believe it was Portlock had drawn on the live yesterday. Like, there's so much history and so much documented history in this area. It's one of the most unbelievable places, not only the United States of Alaska, but the whole United States. And it is privately owned by the corporation still there in Namwalik. So that we were able to go out there and do what we did was just absolutely freaking incredible. And we barely scratched the surface. What you see in the show was not even close to everything. We had so many time slips out there, which I don't want to go on for too long here. But this is one of the craziest things in my entire life. I will give one example that it's just a scene we couldn't include in the show because once you start talking about a time slip, you can't be like, oh yeah, and that one time the time slipped and blah blah blah. Like, you have to really dive into it. We only have 8 episodes to tell this whole backstory and story. But like, when the cameras weren't rolling, when I wasn't in front of the camera, I was out exploring, and I was somewhere in the area seeing if I could find a building, a bridge, or something that needed further exploration. I was studying topo maps. So I talked to Brian, the producer, one day, and we had a bear guard out there named Larry who was there with us for a little bit, and he had his own boat right after Kyle had to leave. And I said, hey Brian, this is where I'm going out on the beach and doing my exploring. It's like 2.5 miles each way. It's just brutal walking over that beach. Can Larry drop me off on the boat? I'll take a walkie with me and a camera. I'll film everything that happens. And when you guys are done shooting that thing, you know, Keith and Guy were out kind of doing their fishing scene. So there's no room for me in the boat. I can't do anything. So when you guys are done, you know, Larry, come back and pick me up. So they're like, yeah, no problem at all. So me and Larry are going down. I'm like, hey, that beach looks good. We're going to pull up the beach, and there's these footprints, huge, bigger than my whole arm, giant footprints walking right out of the ocean into the woods. Nothing in, just perfectly out up. And I'm getting on the walkie, and I'm like, hey, when Larry comes and picks me up, you guys might want to send a cameraman back. Like, we should get a shot of this. This is freaking cool. So I'm out. I have my camera rolling the whole time. I never push pause. I never push stop. I have my camera rolling the second I get off the boat until the second I come back. I walk up in the woods. I'm doing some exploring for about an hour, hour and a half. We have the exact time written down. And when I come back down, I'm looking, and the tide is all the way up. The footprints are almost completely gone. And like, there's no way for me to get back to camp at all if I'm going to walk. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, the time's wrong. And I'm on my walkie. I'm like, hey guys, where are you? What's going, you know, send Larry. And they're like, dude, where have you been? We're trying to reach you. And I'm like, I have a fire built, like literally my walkie's barely working at this point, almost dead. So like, they're like, hey, we're DJ's out looking for you. So I said, hey, you know, I'm out by where Larry dropped me off. So I have a little fire on the beach, and DJ turns the corner. I'm like waving my hands like over here. So we come back, you've been gone like all afternoon. Like, I was gone an hour and a half. So we're comparing their footage and my footage, and I'm missing like almost 6 hours. And we have stuff like that happen so much out there, and there's just no way to even talk about it. So like, it's, the camera's rolling. Like, we have the timer going the whole time. We know exactly how long I'm gone. We have their cameras and stuff rolling. We know when I left, and like, the time just doesn't add up. And there were so many different times like that. When I was out cutting firewood, in one of the first scenes, we look up and there's a tree. Half of the sky above the tree is a complete rainbow. It's just different colors, like something you couldn't even imagine. And the other half of the tree is completely normal and fine. Like, there's so much weird stuff going on out there that we didn't even have time to put on camera. Like, you can't just brush over that real quick and not keep diving into it. So like, we didn't talk about the orbs of light flying around. I mean, we didn't talk about so much of what actually even happened out there.
Wow, that's incredible stuff, man. That's really
change your life. There's no way. I didn't believe in any of this before I went out there. There's no way. I mean, I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian for a long time. I believe something bigger and over, and you know, statistical probability of evolution, everything evolving perfectly. And I don't know. I believe the universe is a big place. We don't know everything. So I wanted to go in this with an open mind and just say, you know, if there's a God there, you know, that could speak a world into existence, there could be a lot of crazy, cool stuff out there we don't understand. And what we encountered out there, we just took the books that we like learned in school, our science books, you throw those out the window. They didn't mean anything after the first few days. I mean, it just, when the tree knocks, we'd be hitting wood and putting up trail cams, and knocks, exact same pattern, 30 seconds, a minute later, be coming back at us. We'd start going to different trees and doing different patterns, and the exact same patterns would be returned to us. Like, whatever's out there, it was definitely trying to make communication at sometimes, and at sometimes I felt like we kind of pissed it off. Like, I believe the show just aired where our camp was attacked, and we literally had rocks that the producer Brian and I could barely pick up. These things, they were still wet. They were bigger than a basketball, covered in sharp barnacles, and the beach was yards away, 20 yards away. And it was obvious they had come off the beach onto the tent. And it was like one of the craziest freaking experiences ever. And it literally took the whole tent down. There was twice out there where we had just set up another tent for the production crew just outside of where we were right there, because they were up kind of doing photos all night and videos and stuff, you know, and it was kind of keeping us up. So we had to set up a little working tent next to our main tent. and they were over there working. We were just getting ready to go to bed when it happened. So we're in our radios. We're like, guns are out, guns out. Stay the F away. Like, I don't know if I'll have to cuss on here. Like, stay away, stay away. Like, guns are out. This is not a drill. You guys stay down, get down. If we need to shoot, we need to be able to pull the trigger, you know? Like, do not come down. Do not film this. This is not a joke. Stay away. Like, this is real. So it took a few minutes to, like, get the place secure and make sure everything was good. And before we could even allow the camera crew to come back, I mean, we literally had guns out running around. There were times where we literally thought our lives were in danger. We had thermal drones up watching stuff coming through the woods at us, way bigger than a bear at full speed. I mean, just absolutely the most terrifying things you could ever imagine. Because when you're in Portlock, there's no help. There's no infrastructure. If something goes wrong, you are 100% reliant on your help. If it is noon on a Tuesday, crystal clear skies, no one's taking a poop, and everything is perfect, you can get a medical helicopter there in an hour to an hour and a half. The weather we were having, it'd regularly be a day to 5 before you could even get something, you know, any help in. So a lot of the crews from LA, they've never really been camping before. You know, the new experience in these woods, and not woods, they are thick, dense, horrible, brutal woods of Devil's Club, of bears, of moose, of all these different dangers. So it was just such a huge experience, keeping everybody safe, keeping the whole thing. Yeah, it was just the infrastructure it took to keep everyone safe was nuts.
That's crazy.
As Ash was talking, I was thinking, again, going back to what some of the native folk had told to the anthropologists. There's this kind of concept that there's only one kind of Bigfoot, is big, huge, hairy, smelly thing that's, you know, maybe vegetarian, and it only attacks us if we surprise it or we attack it first. The native people in the Pacific Northwest, up Vancouver, British Columbia into Alaska, their stories talk about multiple different kinds of these creatures, these critters, and in the native context, what we would think of as supernatural versus the natural world. That doesn't exist. They just simply are, and all beings have some kind of magical power or mana as part of them. And especially when Ash was talking about the banging on the trees, some of these they're actually Sikiak, I think. Please don't get a linguist after me because I'm sure I mispronounced it, but there are smaller Bigfoot. They're covered with hair, and they are very, very malicious, and they carry sticks. They carry magic sticks, and they will hit trees and knock trees down, and they also have power in their voices. One of the things Ash and I were very briefly talking about is where magic is centered in all beings, including human beings, and that is the tongue. The tongue is a very magical part of a human being, according to native lore, because that is part of communication. And it's not just singing; it's also whistling. Is viewed as bringing in kind of magic, and these very malicious Bigfoot are supposed to whistle like birds, but also with the power of their voices and their whistling hypnotize people. And you know, people would be sleeping in their houses, and everybody wakes up in the morning and somebody's left. The door is open, the tent flap is up, and somebody has left, and they've been drawn away by the music of these other critters. And there are ogres that are not necessarily covered with hair, and also newspaper accounts from the 1850s talk about these 12-15 foot high giants or ogres coming out of the mountains and catching people to eat them. And in some cases, in some of these legends, they actually lived underwater or on these remote islands. And there were one or two stories where warriors were actually kind of fooled for a brief time because these ogres have the ability to change their shape. So they are shapeshifters as well. And so
this is something I just thought would have been crazy a few months ago, you know, before going out there. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, if Bigfoot exists, he's just some leftover ape thing. Like, he's just some weird bear who wants to be left alone. Like, until you get out in the field and start experiencing this stuff, it changes your life. Like, there's no way you can just go back to normal, mundane, everyday, after you experience stuff like it. It's absolutely crazy. I get so pumped up talking about this now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yet it may still be somewhere the very mundane Bigfoot, the Gigantopithecus remnant that's still out there. I would also suggest on the Russian side or the Asian side of the Bering Strait too. And so there may be 4 or 5 different kinds of manifesting beings. That's really, really vague, but that's about where I am right now.
My
Yeah,
personal belief is I believe there's some sort of portal in Portlock. I believe it's right by the obelisk and that big tree. The quickest version of this, when we first went out there, it was a few nights in. Noah had just kind of gotten there, and the camera crew was awesome. I can't say enough good about them and what they were able to accomplish, but they're loud, and they're big, and it's starting to get dark. They have lights to try to adjust everything. So we said, you guys are cool. We love you, but we're also going to leave you on the beach tonight, and we're going to go in by ourselves. We'll take Rob, the audio guy, with us, so we have audio of everything going on, but it's just going to be us and Rob out in the woods tonight, So you guys are staying on the beach, and the beach is a little ways away from where we are. So we're up by the creepy tree, and a lot of weird stuff's happening, and we're hearing all these noises and stuff. So I got on the radio and I contacted Alex, the director of photography. I said, hey, Alex, you mind sending up a thermal drone? Just give a little bird's eye of what's going on around here, see if you can see anything. And he's like, hey, guys, I don't think you should be there. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, there's weird. I mean, this dude's on drones all the time, thermal stuff. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. There's this weird funnel coming off the mountain, and it's funneling right down by the tree, right to you guys. And it's like pulsing this energy right into you guys. He's like, I've never seen anything like it before. It's weird. You guys should get out of there. And right then you heard Brian get on his. He's like, get out of there now. Run, guys. Go. We're like, what the crap? Like, and we get out and we look at this footage, and there was something massive coming out of the woods after us. But the reason I tell them this story is because the next day we have a medium come out. Her name was Polly. Polly didn't really get a full, fair shakedown on the show. She set up a little hostility for one of our cast members, to say the least, who wasn't there very long, not to mention Noah's name. But when Polly was there, we kind of said, hey, we want to go up this area and check all this stuff out. So we're walking. She says, well, we can do anything, but we can't go to that area. And we're like, well, that's kind of the area we want you to go in. Why won't you go there? She's like, well, it just seems closed off. There's like this weird energy. And I said, well, can you describe the energy? She's like, no, how do you describe an energy? I don't know. I'm not a medium. You are. How do you describe an energy? She's like, just this weird funnel of energy pulsing into right there. She saw a funnel. The funnel was the one word I was looking for. Well, like weeks later, after we had met with Ron Moorhead, and he had told us about white light and witching hour, I decided to go out in the tree stand. And I'm out there, and after I came out the tree stand and I grabbed my backpack and I'm coming down, I'm standing at the base of this tree, and I've talked tons of times about this. I'm on podcasts and live and everything. My batteries are just starting to die, and I could see branches, just like a scene in Jurassic Park. Like it's just getting light enough to see the sky. I can see these branches moving a ways away, like something coming to the trees right at me. And I could feel that pulsing energy just pulsing through my whole body right before the energy standing right there. And as it breached the trees, and it's just where I could see it, turned into a ball of light about the size of a basketball. And it was floating around before it dissipated. But I could feel that energy pulsing straight through me. I could feel it going in the top of my head, shooting out the bottom of my feet, coming out of my feet, shooting back up. And I was standing right by that tree. And it was the craziest feeling I've ever experienced. And people ask all the time, what did it feel like? And I said, it felt exactly like being electrocuted. Like just that zap to your body, but the opposite. It was the most dull, the opposite of being electrocuted. And it was just the weirdest feeling shooting through me. Like, absolutely unbelievable. So like when we first talk about Bigfoot, you think you're talking about this like bear looking thing running around, and what we experienced was pulses of energy and balls of light and whispers and knocks and rock throwing and tents being, and just so different than what we've ever were able to even wrap our minds around before.
Wow. I had a whole list of questions and stuff for you guys, and I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. I mean, like, you got some really cool, like, I mean, people that watch. A couple things that I wanted to touch on. I let you guys go here. For your IMBD thing,
Yes.
when people are talking about, well, you're just an actor or something because you're on IMDb. It says, this is the cast. They're all actors and stuff. No, because I mean, maybe you can talk a little more on this too. But like the fact of being on IMDb means that you are credited as a cast member of a show, and
Yeah.
some of these people that are on other shows and that are on multiple shows, like you yourself, Jeff, have appeared and talked and done research for other shows. So yeah, you are on all these other shows. That doesn't make you an actor. That means that you're credited to working on those shows, and I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yes, indeed. For those people, I encourage you to look at IMDb. It's fascinating. Among other things, you will see for the credits for Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, we are all credited as self. We are appearing as ourselves, and or cast members. I actually do have, and I do actually have a film credit or two where I appeared as background extra as well as a speaking part. I have actors equity for a movie I did years ago. And here's the interesting thing. I was on a pilot that never aired anywhere for a reality paranormal show. And somebody said, "Well, why didn't you say it this way?" And somebody else on the cast actually said, because if he said it that way, you would be giving him a script. And if it's a script, that means that you have to pay him an actor's wage
That'd be
for
nice.
speaking role. Yeah.
I would like
and-
that. Hey, we
Yeah.
can rewrite these contracts. I didn't know this.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you'd have to pay him equity scale because you're asking him to read a script off and act. And so, yeah, indeed, Ash and I and the guys, we're not getting equity wage for this.
And one thing that really, I think, kind of confuses people. Say you're watching the Kardashians. I've never watched the Kardashians. I've watched half of an episode. But say you're watching the Kardashians.
It's a treat, Ash.
They decide they want to go out to lunch, and so they just randomly go to a restaurant. It took a minimum of 1 month to get the permission to shoot there, to get all the contract. They didn't just decide to go to lunch. That's why the only thing we do in our show with anything like that, even when we're in town, is go to one coffee shop, because Lance was awesome when we kind of had people in town who were dealing with where they kind of would work with them and send coffee, and even on the rarest occasion kind of send us, when we had a helicopter come out, he'd be nice to send us some sandwiches and stuff. So Lance is in the show at the end and talked to him, and he was just a really cool guy in Homer with the local business that we were kind of able to work with. But we had to set those up like over a month ahead of time. So like when we're out there, everything is just coming as it comes. But like when you're in town, like some of those things do have to be a little bit pre-planned. So we were really fortunate where we didn't have people in the background out there. We didn't have to try to reshoot a lot. We didn't have to get permission. We just kind of went out and did. And it's just really different than a lot of shows for that reason. So many shows are very produced, and they have to be. You can't just walk into a coffee shop with a camera crew, So yeah, there was no casting for the show. There was no like, hey, who wants to be on a show? Apply here. It was like, here's the group of guys that are going out. If you want to follow along, feel free. Probably one of the hardest parts out there is people are like, you guys leave a lot when things get crazy. I'm like, yeah, we're in the woods of Alaska after dark. Have you ever been around a bear guard anywhere? They make you stay in camp. You're not even allowed to go into the woods at dark because, we know what we're doing is the reason we are. But now we have to keep all these cameramen alive. We have to keep audio guys alive. We have to keep producers alive. Well, that all falls on us. We're the only experienced ones out there. So when things did get really crazy, and after a while, if we weren't really experiencing anything, we would kind of send the crew back. And then one of us, myself, guy, whatever, we would take a solo camera and go back out alone, because it sounds weird, but it's a lot easier for me to keep myself safe in the woods than for me to keep you guys safe in the woods. Like I know how to do me. I know how, that's what I do. So a lot of the hardships out there was just kind of keeping everyone safe. And then once we were done tracking through the woods for 16 hours, there's no catering. So we had to cook dinner. DJ had to go cook. We had to literally haul water from the beach up to do dishes, and it was an absolutely brutal amount of work just outside of filming.
One thing I did want to ask Jeff here, we were talking earlier about the obelisk that they
Mhm.
find out in the woods and that. You were talking about the history of when they come in and they set up this thing and they did the ceremony that you're under our control and stuff now. Have you found or done any research on these obelisks anywhere else? Like that there's been more camps set up that way?
Yes, actually, there's some great examples. The critical thing is to, as far as the Europeans went, especially on the west coast of North America, was to because they were competing. The United States government was competing for ownership of the land and the people. The English were, the Spaniards were, and the Russians were. Is at a certain point you have to document that you were there. You have to leave something behind that another explorer can identify, and you can go back and say, look, I built this pile of stones and I performed the ceremony as required by law with witnesses. And so, among other things, Lewis and Clark, when they came down the Rocky Mountains west along the Columbia River and to the Pacific Ocean, in a couple different places where they had significant events. They in one place they carved their names into the sandstone cliff face. And another occasion, they found a tree that's a very, very large tree, and they carved markers in the tree with their names and the dates as part of this ceremony. In a lot of places, in 1792, a Lieutenant Broughton, which is before Lewis and Clark, he managed to get his ship over the mouth of the Columbia River from the ocean side to the riverside, but he was afraid that his ship would be wrecked. So he got two ships' boats and a bunch of sailors, and for several days they rowed upstream the Columbia River a distance of over 100 miles. And two separate places he stopped, he drew charts, and here is this mountain that he named Mount Hood at this direction off the compass, and here are these other landmarks. And they held a possession ceremony. There was actually a Native American chief witnessing this. They had built a pile of stones and they buried some English coins as proof again they were there, and had a tot of rum. And then eventually they rowed back down the river. So this was part of this process. Again, you had to be able to demonstrate that you were there if you were going to lay claim to millions of acres of land and the people and the resources.
And what Jeff just said about the obelisk was really cool because, like you said, they kind of went and found rocks and like kind of piled them up. When we were finding concrete all over Portlock, we found concrete in a lot of places, from canneries and sawmills and stuff. It was very well made cement. It was something that you would see in the 40s, 50s, 20s even. Like it was, if you were into downtown New York right now, there's still buildings made in that time, and the concrete foundations are still really strong. It's really good concrete. That's the concrete we found most everywhere around Portlock. If there's a sharp 90-degree angle, that sharp 90-degree angle is still in it because it was so well made. The obelisk is different. The obelisk is very crudely made. It looks to be very old. It's like real uneven, almost like beach rock. Like they went down the beach and just like grabbed the sand that they kind of could, that nothing was brought in for it. It was covered in plaster. Like nothing about the obelisk matches up with anything else around the entire area. So, I mean, that is completely what it does appear to be.
And it is on a headland. And so, and Ash and I have talked about this, whether or not, if there were no trees around it, how visible would this be out to sea? And then you take this as a question, if it would be, could it have been made in the late 1800s to guide in the fishing boats? Well, maybe, but then again, there was no town of Portlock until about 1900. So
it seems older. It just seems how it's falling, like how it's disintegrating, how it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. I raise these just as what I think are commonsensical questions. That one of the things that I really loved about the way Brian put together the episodes is this is a progression. Each episode is a series of experiments, and so this is where hopefully the studio will okay a second season, and we can go back. So I'm now saying we go back.
Well, we're hoping you come with us. We're hoping.
Me too. I have a shotgun all picked out just in case.
Nice.
But amen. And anyway, so we run these experiments and hopefully figure out more answers. And in a true scientific spirit, even if the answer isn't what you expected, it's still valid. Then you go try more experiments. And so,
well, yeah, we had to come up to, when we first found the obelisk, we thought what we thought it was. So the first thing we did is we kind of dug out the bottom. We looked to see if there's somewhere it could be holding a beam, if there was a cutout where wood was in it, where it's structure for a building. We started at the obelisk and started doing circular patterns outwards, looking for boards, looking for roofing, seeing if it was some sort of part of a building. We started looking in different directions, north, south, east, and west, seeing if there was more of them lined up, if it's possibly for like some sort of water pipe. Of course, you'd like to see if there's any sort of infrastructure for it. And it just became obvious. This thing's in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of on a cliff looking out towards the sea to be seen. Like, it just completely different, like you're saying. So like when you first come in, Kyle was like, hey, I wonder if this thing points north. So we pull out a compass, and a little ways away from it, you can tell the compass is pointing towards the obelisk, which is not north at all. It's like almost east. I'm like, that's weird. So the closer we get, we see it just start spinning. So the whole compass is spinning the closer it gets to the obelisk. So it's like when you first find something like that, it's not just like, oh, look, there's an obelisk. That's from the 1700s. Like, it takes so much time and experimentation to try to get any answers off of it. So to have someone like Jeff there that we can turn that over to and be like, hey, we found this crazy thing, help us find out what it is. We would have never known about piles of rocks from Lewis and Clark, like it's just been so incredible having historian there that if we can get him down there with us next year, where he can like hands-on touch, see, feel, picture, I think it'd be an incredible for everybody.
I think so too. And there's some other experiments. And this was part of the chat we had on the fan page, and fans go on the page and they make these suggestions. One is in various shots, you can see in the bay, there's this little island with a few trees on it. And I think one of the elders had commented that the Black Lady is kind of associated with that island as well. So Kyle and I volunteered to spend the night there on the island in the middle of the bay.
Yes.
And I pretty much guarantee you, I've not been there, but I doubt that either of us, if we were going to try and swim ashore, we'd die of hypothermia before we could make it to shore.
Well, Cook Inlet has the second highest tidal differences of anyone in the world. We can have a -5 and a +25. That's 30 feet of water. So if you're standing on what was ground in 2 weeks, it'll be 30 feet over your head. Incredible tidal differences. So if you have 20 feet of water coming out of an entire inlet, you can imagine just the rip tides that creates, just the flows out. So depending on the tides, you can't even get in and out of some of these places just because the amount of water flow. So if you try to swim, it's like Alcatraz. If you try to swim to shore, there's just no way. There's those tides just pull you to Russia. I mean, you're gone before you even know it.
So what I hear you saying is that I stand behind Kyle if anything bad happens.
And don't swim. Yeah.
So
my goal this time is to sleep at the creepy tree. I tried to get a tent out where I could do it last time and sleep out in the weird zone by myself, and unfortunately, we just couldn't get the stuff out in time.
And of course, the canvas of those tent walls is going to stop any heavily clawed creature from.
Yeah. So, have you guys heard anything about a season 2? And if you have, or either way, I know you're kind of talking about some of the things. Do you have any other ideas, any other plans as far as equipment or stuff that you're going to bring out there this time? Or
see, we don't want this to be a normal show. We don't want to be a normal Bigfoot show ever. We want to continue to kind of doing what we're doing, just some real guys out in the woods. So on our Facebook group, Alaskan Killer Bigfoot Official, it's not an official contest yet. We have to wait until the network renews it. But we've been asking people, if we brought you out for 48 hours, what would you do? What would you bring? What would you want to see or experience? When people give us these really cool ideas, we don't want to just totally steal them and run with them. If you have some awesome idea and you're an expert in something, we'd love to bring you out for a couple days, see what, your opinion on everything is. I lost my headspace. Darn it. I didn't even say that time. What was your question? I answer such a long ways around sometimes.
What do you have you heard anything about a second season? And
Season 2.
If so, what are your plans for some of the stuff that you're going to be doing?
So we would love to do LiDAR and testing on the obelisk. Like we were talking with Jeff yesterday, see if we can scratch some off and see if it's limestone. If limestone's not around there, if they could do some testing, see where it's from. We found a bunch of old metal where we could possibly, you can't carbon date metal per se, but you can look and see how it's built for blacksmithing. We found the pit that goes back to like the 1500s that all needs redone. So there's so much that still needs done in a season 2. The network has told us everything looks great for a season 2. The viewership's up, the ratings are good. So as long as people keep watching on Travel Channel, going to IMDb, rating it, everything looks good and positive and good to go. But they just won't give you a yes or no until they give you a yes or no. And we're really hoping that soon.
Yeah, I agree with Ash, because don't forget the show exists because the people want to move back. So I think one of the priorities, because this is one of these oddities, I've done research and Brian has done research and the Tribal Corporation have. There's not a good map of pre-1950 Portlock. The LiDAR would be great. Anything to generate a map of where the town was, and we begin from there and look for significant places. I'm curious as to where the old cemetery is. We have to reconsecrate the cemetery and pay tribute to the people who are buried there. Is one thing that's important to me.
Yeah, that was one of the main things I was looking for there, to make sure we weren't doing anything disrespectful in that area, like kind of doing anything, cut and build anything, and we just weren't able to find it. I think LiDAR would be incredible for that. We have the map of stuff we found that you guys kind of see on the show. One thing we do point out, that map is very accurate, but it's not 100%. There's things like the pit. We're not going to tell everybody exactly where it is. It's very close to where we have it, but if it's private property, you can't go out there without permission anyways. And if you did, you wouldn't find it. So we do want to get a really good, nice, accurate map eventually. One of the hardships we have right now, though, is that it is so remote that it's hard to keep someone out there and just trying to keep trespassers out. We always want people to know it is private property. It's owned by the corporation. They do not have to give warning shots if you're trespassing. That's their land. You need to go do it the right way like we did if you're going to go out there.
Very good. Yeah, I was just saying, we had a comment that LiDAR would be great, and I think that would be cool too. If you're one of the things, the whole premise of the start of the show was going out there to map, where everything was, and the LiDAR is able to penetrate the tree cover and stuff in a lot of cases, and you get a lot of very good, accurate, where everything was and stuff. So
they have a really cool name for that. It's called hindsight. I hear it's 2020. We didn't know that. Yeah, we're just a bunch of Alaskans going out to try. We thought, oh, look, there's a building. Oh, there's a building. Oh, there's a building. There, we'll map it out. Well, we didn't expect. Well, we talked a little bit last night. The '64 tsunami coming through. That was the second largest earthquake recorded in history or something. I mean, in modern history. It was massive. The tsunami from that, still, it was in '64. There's whole valleys that aren't growing. There's whole fields that are affected where nothing can still grow in. That wave came up. Not only did it kill stuff going up, but it pulled stuff back to sea going out. It took a lot of the shoreline with it and stuff. So what we're looking for right now is so different to possibly the topo of when it was, existed there, that it would just be so helpful to be able to have that LiDAR to see how little roads are passed, see if we can find them, if they connected. And we're not only looking for the Russian, we're not only looking for the British, we're not only looking for the Spanish and the native, we're looking for all of it. It'd be cool to find some old, Russian, 400-year-old Russian trapping cabin, or, there's so much out there, and it's so dense and so thick. It just, every step is just, you're fighting and fighting and fighting for it.
You're making me kind of regret offering to go back out there, Ash.
It's Alaska. It's what you do. I mean, we had almost a class 2 hurricane. It was like a 1.5. We had sub-zero temperatures. Like, It's brutal. You're in the Alaska bush and you're at the mercy of the Alaskan weather. I remember in North Carolina, if it might rain or hard or might snow tomorrow, like school was canceled. They'd be like, it could snow tomorrow, no school. Here, if there's a class 2 hurricane, we call it Tuesday. School's in session and the women are down on the reef getting octopus. Man, that reef, if it's available twice a month, they're down there. You live off the tides, you don't live off the weather. So what most people like down in Florida would be evacuating for, here they're heading to the water to go get harvesting. Like, it's absolutely a different world, and it's crazy to see the resilience of the people who have, like, the natives who have grown up and lived here. They've really learned how to live with and on the land, and it's quite a beautiful thing to learn from.
I don't know if they said it in the show or not, but when you were down there filming, the time that you were there, what month time frame of year was that? Do you know?
I'm not sure how much of that we're really allowed to give away.
Okay. I was just wondering as far as like weather and
spring into
stuff.
fall,
Okay.
or spring into summer.
Okay.
But the corporation has stuff that they kind of do down the area stuff where, it definitely has to be one of the native guys more of that. They like to keep that a little more on the.
But more of the summer months, or the spring summer months kind of probably.
Yeah, we don't always like letting people know when we're filming either, just because look, you lose. I mean, people in town hearing that we're down there, we had so many boats, people just coming by. We had a guy, he brought a boat and he was like dragging a kayak behind it, and it was like dead calm, perfect still water. And like people on the boats, like I don't know if they're trying to film a movie or what they were doing. They had the guy get in the kayak and act like he was upside down trying to get it right, and people got buckets of water and throwing on them, and we're just sitting there laughing like, what the heck are these idiots doing? They're just right offshore watching us. Like, yeah, the look you lose is definitely, it's hard and brutal to get to, but Alaskans are pretty resilient and know how to kind of get around. So we try to keep it a little more on the down low when we're out there.
Okay.
This is a tangent, but I remember many years ago, 10, 15 years ago at least, there was it was a peaceful landing of U.S. Marines in North Africa somewhere, and so they're coming in just before dawn, getting off their landing craft and coming up on the beach, and then all of a sudden the giant white lights come up because the press is waiting for them, and so here these Marines are in combat gear trudging up through the surf to the waiting eyes of all the cameras and the satellite uplinks. But it's reality TV, isn't it?
Yeah. So we were really fortunate. The camera crews we had out there were tough. They were badass. Like they were able to keep up a lot better than we ever expected them to. Whenever cool stuff, there was a scene in there where Ron Moorhead had sent us a red laser grid, and we went on a really foggy night and set it up. And we're sitting on this stump, on this log, just watching this grid. And like things start walking through this grid. I'm not saying Bigfoot per se, I don't, but like something like 12 foot tall, 13 foot tall is like manipulating this grid. And I'm like, nobody gonna believe this. So we're not really supposed to do this. I acted like I had to pee really bad. And I just kind of like stood up and stepped back behind the camera crew. I pulled my camera out. I'm like, I have to record this for my damn self, man. There's like this 14 foot tall, perfect shape of a Bigfoot walking through the grid where you can see the whole outline of his head and everything moving. I'm just like, I want this for my damn self, man. So I'm out there with my camera taking pictures and videos too, slip in my pocket and run back and sit down real quick like I was sitting there the whole time. I was like, what we were experiencing out there, we were just as freaking stoked as anyone. Like when I was in the mine, no one went in the mine with me. Everyone was scared that it was too unsafe. So they're like, just go the first corner, no further, no further. So I walk real slow and I get the first corner, and me being me, man, I just took off running. I was getting as far into that thing as I could. I was going to see what the heck's in there. Man, I'm probably a half mile in this thing. I'm a legit distance in, and I see this like weird, like kind of cave-in spot. So I'm taking my time and I'm looking, I'm like, what is that? There's something in the air. So as I walk up, there's this, it's not a breath. It's just like a fog, like a mist hanging in the air. So I took my phone out and I have my Olight camera and or flashlight, and I'm like filming all this on my phone. So everybody coming out like, man, that's so CG. They did that post. I'm like, that's my freaking cell phone. I have all the originals, like so much when I was out, I just used my cell phone to capture it and then just kind of signed it over to Discovery to use on the show. Like when people they weren't going to give us their cameras. They didn't trust us near that much. Those things are expensive as crap. They only have one each. So we did have little diary cams we'd run around with night vision sometimes. But when there wasn't, like when we were out and didn't have access to all that stuff, a lot of it just shot on our cell phones.
Yeah, it's on some of the shows I've been on, and even Alaskan Killer Bigfoot, I learned a long time ago, don't touch the camera bags. Don't, because
Yeah.
they're worth like $1 million, and I can't afford to buy one if I break it.
One of the lenses I almost broke was like 60 grand, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't break that. Yeah, yeah. And then there's no replacements out there, so the director of photography now doesn't have a camera, so it's like it's definitely something that you just don't do.
Yeah. Oh, and the added benefit is now I'm not having to lug all that stuff around.
Right. But they did get so crazy out there a few times. I do have pictures of us where we did take the cameras from the camera crew to film them because they were freaking out so bad. What we were experiencing, they were experiencing too, except they're all from LA. They've never experienced anything like it. So when there's audio like stuff happening, Rob, the audio's I got that all. Like they're all freaking out too. Like this is as crazy for them or even more than it is for us. There are times we didn't have a choice but to turn the camera back on them. I wish more of that stuff would have made the show, but they kind of were trying to keep it a little more,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, when we were out, like everyone was just as on edge and just as alert and experiencing the same things. So I mean, there's scenes where you'll even hear the producer, "We got that, we got that," Like, yeah, everyone's just so excited when we're capturing the stuff that we're capturing.
Did you know if any of the, like you're talking about the crew, not being used to being out there and stuff, do you know if any of the film or audio crew or the producer had worked on any other shows of this type before, or if this was
the Dead Files?
Okay.
Brian, Spencer, and Alex have both all done about 100 episodes of the Dead Files. They've worked in paranormal before. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but my understanding is none of them were really believers in the paranormal going out there. They went and they filmed all these cool experiences and people's stories, but they never got to experience it. When they were out there experiencing it, I mean, they were freaking out just like the stinking rest of us. Ken Sauls, who was camera B, cool guy. He shot Deadliest Catch. Rob, our audio guy, has done stuff with like Gordon Ramsay and Wolfgang Puck and Dr. Pimple Popper and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So these guys have all worked on big shows. Dylan has done like Floors Lava and a whole bunch of them, but none of them have been out in Alaska like this. None of them have stayed out. When you're filming a show, even like Skinwalker Ranch type shows, when filming wraps up at 5 or 6, you kind of leave, you go back to your hotel room and catering's there and you have the table of all the food. The food was what DJ made, or the foods in our backpack and the dishes that we made. It was just such a completely different experience to be able to find people who would go out there and break their 10-day contracts and break their hour things. Like they had to shoot so much above and beyond that it just was really, really, really hard actually putting the crew together to go out there. You can't just take anyone out. Yeah. So many people are liability, and a liability out there will get you hurt or killed.
I know I got a chance to I was in the comments section on Paranormal Pete's show when DJ was on, and I had asked him the same kind of thing I did, with you guys. Did you research any Bigfoot or something? And he goes, I was just supposed to be the cook. I wasn't even supposed to be on the show. And he goes, here I am now on camera and experiencing the stuff, and I wasn't even supposed to be part of this, and
Guy was supposed to be there. The whole time, but he had some family issues and was down in Seattle with his daughter. And DJ was just moving back into the village, and he'd studied at Cordon Bleu. And we're like, hey, dude, like, heck yeah, man, a chef, local. And then when I got to meet DJ, I started calling Brian and Sarah. I'm like, guys, wait till you meet him. Like, he has to be on. Like, there's no way. It's like, wait till you meet this dude. So we kind of had the internet in Namwalla, it's horrible, and I had a little bit of Wi-Fi, so Keith and DJ and myself all sat around my dining room table, and we had a little Zoom with the producers and stuff before the show started, And that's when they met DJ, and like 30 seconds in, they're like, you're a cast member, right? Like, you don't have a say in this. So DJ went from cook, he was supposed to be like full-time cook, and he was going to be like cook half the time, and then he was cook less. And finally it was like, okay guys, we need to send DJ back to cook now. We're going to be hungry tonight. So yeah, DJ, he was a trooper. I mean, he went above and beyond literally the whole time.
One of the questions I asked him, I'm going to ask you the same thing too. When you guys were out there on the beach, a lot of like, as far as like Bigfoot research goes and that, like myself, sometimes we believe that when you have a fire, that these things come in and interact more. So my question is, did you notice like at nighttime, like obviously you had a fire going most nights because of the cold or whatever. Did you notice that at night, if there was a fire, there was more activity or less activity in the beach area?
Well, here's something that we don't cover a lot in the show. When we started bringing people in after episode 1 or 2, and we started hearing all these weird noises all the time, we told them don't react to them. We can't talk about the noises anymore. So when you hear us stop talking about the knocks and the whistles and stuff, it's not because they're there. It's we just couldn't beat that dead horse anymore. Where it just every episode, every scene, you can't be like knocks, whistles, knocks, howls, moans, growls, basketball games, car, like toucans. Like the sounds were just so crazy all the time. When we started bringing people in, we're like, we know it sounds weird. We know you're gonna, blah blah blah. But just ignore it. It happened all the time. It was just completely continuous. Stuff happened just as much in and around camp as it did when we were out. We had the campfire pit right outside of the tent. We would sit and kind of debrief every night, and we always had different sounds and hoops and hollers and weird stuff. But then when we moved into the tent, we had an actual like wood stove in there that just kind of had smoke out the chimney. And once we kind of moved into there, things didn't always calm down, but it did kind of get a little bit less. I mean, there were nights we'd have so much activity that it's literally in the show, the camera guys coming up being like, couldn't sleep last night, like they'd like wake us up in the middle of the night all the time. Like, what was that? What was that? And we're like, oh my God, it didn't kill you. Go to bed, like, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I was just wondering about that because we've had activity like amp up when you build a fire, like when we're out in the woods and stuff, my team and that. So I didn't know if you guys had seen kind of similar thing or if it was just all the time.
The only fires we really had were right when you turn that corner into Portlock, when you can see the building on the map that everybody kind of knows, like the infamous building that we stayed in night 1 there. Our tent was way or towards the beach from that. We found the biggest opening that we possibly could to put the tent in so we could kind of see around us. We had a lot more activity in the woods than we did around the fire, but every time the fire was going, we heard and saw stuff, hands down. But we purposely had the fire as far away from the woods as possible.
Awesome. Well, you guys have been awesome. I really appreciate your time and coming on and talking about the show and sharing some of your behind the scenes experiences as well. I mean, that's just, a lot of people that talk about Bigfoot experiences, you hear the wood knocks, the howls, the whoops, the whistles and stuff. And a lot of people don't know all the other stuff, the lights and, the weird, feeling sick, there's so much more that we can get
weird.
into.
So many people, man. After I got sick, sick. Like when I was out there cutting wood, that was right after the sky turned into a rainbow, like half the sky. And I got sick. Kyle got really sick not too long after that. Polly got sick. Guy got sick. Like lots of us got sick, and always kind of like right in the same areas doing the same things. Like it was not something I definitely expected at all. That was definitely new to all of us.
Did you just say that it's like always in the same spot when you guys were getting sick, or?
Yeah,
really?
we brought in a Geiger calendar. We brought in all kinds of stuff to try to figure it out. We call it the W zone or the weird zone. You can see when you're looking at the creepy tree that the bark has been removed off of the roots of it. That was really weird going out. I see rubbings all the time where moose rub trees, where porcupine eat the bark off of trees. But it's always, they look very, what the look is. This is different. When porcupines eat the bark, moose rub it off, it starts a little bit shallow, it goes deep, comes shallow again as their antlers are scraping on the bark. And their moose are huge. They're taller than I am. Scrapings are 3 to 10 feet up on the trees, these are all on the roots. Something has went and removed the bark off the roots of this certain area in almost a perfect circle of what we call the weird or the W zone, where almost all the activity happened. And the bark had just been like ripped off and it's still sitting next to the tree, like nothing ate it or took it or used it. And it's only in that one area. It's really weird. And it's where most of the sicknesses happen. It's where the pit is. It's where the creepy tree is. It's where the obelisk is. It's where so much of the epicenter of everything that we experienced was. And it's that area where we put trail cams up. And we would take a trail cam. We'd test it for a day. We'd test it for a week in camp. And we've all used trail cams. I mean, we're Alaskans. We go hunting and stuff all the time. You know, we have trail cams up everywhere. You take your trail cam, and it'd be perfectly fine working the camp. You'd take it, you'd set it out. And as you were walking away, it'd take a picture of you walking away, and then the batteries would be dead. Or about 10 minutes after we were there, something would trigger it a time or two, and then it would just be a rainbow. It would just be the most broken up, distorted photo you could never see, and then it was dead. We would take it back, we would test it, put new batteries in it, race the cards. It would work fine for days and weeks and weeks. We put it back in the zone, boom, same thing happened every single time.
Is that the same area with the funnel?
Yep, right by it.
Yeah.
Yep, right where the funnel. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
The W zone, the weird zone.
Yeah, you just said that, but I was going to ask you too if the funnel was right by the obelisk and stuff as well. But yeah.
Yes, it's kind of the obelisk and the creepy tree are maybe a 2-minute walk from each other. It's pretty rugged, swampy, mussy, devil's clubby, nasty, boggy. So it's a pretty slow walk in 2 minutes. It's not very, you could hit it with a slingshot pretty easily. And it's right at that same area where the funnel is, where the creepy tree is. We call it the creepy tree because we've seen trees everywhere. If we look, there's trees. I mean, it's Alaska. There's trees everywhere. And I've cut trees. We've seen trees. This tree is different. This tree is old. We say 600 conservative, probably 1,000 years old. It's massive, and it's right in the middle of the epicenter of everything. It's when the town was there, it would have kind of been like right in the way of everything, and no one has taken one branch off it. Not one branch is broken on it. Every other old growth tree in the entire area is gone, cleared, cut. No one has ever messed with this tree except the bark off the roots of it's removed like the other ones. And it's just the epicenter of everything. Ron Moorhead talked how he believed Bigfoot could like energize in trees. And I thought that was kind of crazy sounding at first, but after talking with some natives and elders, there's a lot of native lores that Bigfoot lived in trees and bounced and kind of went through trees. So that was completely mind-blowing to me. And then to find that old tree out there's like the epicenter of everything. It really just kind of expanded my mind, you know?
And you know, myth-wise, sorry to interrupt, myth-wise, this is also true from Asia and Europe. If you've ever heard of a dryad.
I was just going to say you should look into those. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are magical beings that are are entwined with the spirit of a tree itself, and they watch after the woods. They're guardian spirits.
See, this is why I think it's a portal right there. I do. I don't know if that energy is a portal opening or closing or something. It wasn't too far from that area where I literally had like 5 hours disappear one time. Like, I mean, so much weird stuff happens right in that exact area. Even when you're holding a camera, that's when, right when that thing whispered in my ear, I was like, okay, I'm done. Screw this, screw you all. I'm out. I was here to be peaceful. I've been chill for 20 minutes. This is too far, you know? So I have my camera rolling and I have my Olight. It's an expensive, really good flashlight. It's fully charged. I go and I turn it on and it just dead. There's nothing there. I'm like, no. Like this is not how this works. Like I have my headlamp on. Really nice black diamond, fully charged. Boom. Nothing. Completely dead. And that's when I tried to turn the flashlight on the camera, and the camera just went out on me. The camera crew had the same issues when crazy stuff was happening. There's whole scenes missing. We'd be out and we'd have 3 cameras filming. We'd come back and there's just nothing. And it happened so many times. I mean, just the weird stuff that happened with the camera crew, you could make a whole show out of.
We got a comment over here. Ask if you could talk about when the creepy tree was on fire.
That was crazy because we were sitting around a fire and we saw it on fire. We've all seen fires. I've been a wildland firefighter. I was just in Anderson, Alaska, around that huge clear fire for the past 2 weeks. I'm camping with wildland firefighters. I know fires well. Fire is what I do. Everybody calls me Axe Naderhoff. I always have an axe. I'm always building a fire. That was a fire. You could smell the smoke from it. You could see the flames. You could see how the flames were dancing and flickering. It wasn't like a solid anything. And it was in the middle of the freaking woods, in the middle of nowhere. Every cast member, every crew member was right there. We just grabbed what we could and we're running. Literally, the only people who weren't really helping fight the fire were the camera guys who were trying to kind of film it. We had buckets. By the time we got up, there was nothing. It was just fog. Like, there was no light source. There was nothing. So it was that area. That's right where the cannery was, and mysteriously burnt down a couple times. When you look at the ground there, you can see it's still charred from old fires. That whole area is burnt. So that was weird. None of us really slept that night, but I don't want to ruin anything on the last episode 8, but that was completely different. Like, at the end of episode 8, we were looking at it and saw the fire. We knew it was different. We actually had to go back and put that fire out. That was like a legit don't burn the forest down. We were on satellite phones getting ready to like call in professional helicopters. Like, we were legit freaking out. And we actually found something at that fire that would be where season 2 started. What we found, one of the coolest, most tangible pieces of proof that people have been looking for so stinking long. It completely blew our minds, and I would be sued to crap if I said what it was. But when we were standing there looking at it, we were all just like, damn, like, we have to get back. Like, we have to come back. I mean, we knew the second we were standing there that we weren't done.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you said what you did there, because I wanted to ask that question without asking it. So yeah.
So we thought at first that first one was like, oh, what the heck? So we were mind blown. So when we first saw the second one, we didn't know what to really expect, but it was daytime and right in our field of view. I mean, we were still in the boat when we were telling us, get a camera, get a drone. So the drone shot that we see, we were still in the boat. We didn't even get a chance to get back to fight the fire yet. It was, there were probably 4 moments out there that were true life and danger. Things can get out of hand pretty quick. That was one of them. We had the one I told you about just a little bit ago at the tree. And there was another one where we had a thermal drone up by the Banya, and something huge was coming at us, where we were like behind a log, had guns out, waiting for something to come out of the woods at us. We didn't have guns out a lot. We're all Second Amendment believing Alaskans. We don't go to the grocery store to check the mail or anywhere without packing. I mean, I'm sitting in my PJs in my camper right now, and I have a piece on me. We stay pretty protected at all times. So we definitely did have guns, but we didn't want to be a bunch of like redneck Alaskans running through the woods hunting Bigfoot per se. So we definitely have ways to keep ourselves safe out there from different things. But there were 2 real times. Once when the camp was attacked, and once when we were hiding behind the log by the Banya there, where we just had full guns out, like ready to protect and defend ourselves. And we were out there to film Portlock, not Alaskan Killer Bigfoot. So it really was a shock to all of us. I mean, you hear stories growing up, you're the native guys, you know. I mean, I've heard some Bigfoot stories. I was on 2880 Forest Service Road in Washington for 6 months. I've seen weird stuff. None of us even came close to expecting like what was out there. Like, it just completely was, mind blowing.
Wow. Well, we are almost out of time here for my allotted slot, so I really appreciate both of you coming on. Your wealth of knowledge, Jeff, for being there and helping these guys out. And Ash, all your stories have been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate the behind-the-scenes look at some of the other stuff that we didn't get to see, and just sharing your experiences and stuff.
I don't know how all the shows can't come on like yelling all the behind the scenes stuff, man. If you're out there capturing this stuff, how can you stay freaking quiet about it, man? Freaking changed our lives. I can't even sleep at night half the time still. Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if I could add, this coming Sunday is episode 8 of the series on the Travel Channel, or you can sign up for Discovery Plus and pay to watch it, all 8 episodes. And I think all of us hope that you like it. And if you do, please visit imdb.com and rate the show.
Yeah,
It's a very
definitely.
controversial subject. When you talk about Bigfoot and balls of light and energy, people are going to have questions. That's why we come on. We do these question and answers. We do these lives every Sunday on our Facebook group. I mean, we know when you're out talking about Bigfoot, people are going to have different thoughts and opinions, and we love hearing, especially we love hearing different controversy, different altering opinions. We learn so much from that. Where we literally want to bring some of our fans out next year to kind of help us to be out and experience. We love when people think of things that we don't think of. That's one of the best parts of this.
Very cool. You guys have a official Facebook fan page. What was that again?
Alaskan Killer Bigfoot Official.
Awesome.
We're on there. We try to answer every question asked as much as we can. We try to respond to every message people send us. It just gets completely overwhelming at times, but we truly do our best.
Yeah, and a lot of behind the scenes photos from Ash and the rest of the guys, and occasionally some of the crew members will also answer questions too.
Yeah, tons of behind the scenes, hundreds and hundreds of photos and videos, and I mean, yeah. The whole time we were out there, we knew that what we were experiencing, people are going to be doubting and questioning forever. So even as the camera crews were taking pictures, we were still taking our own at the same time. Like we weren't going to miss that opportunity.
Definitely. All right, guys, we are out of time for this week. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys can come back on. If you guys get a season 2, I hope you do. I look forward to seeing it. I look forward to watching more of what you guys are doing. And I hope that you guys get back out to Portlock and get it settled and everything goes well for you in the future.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much again for having us. Jeff, always love chatting with you, brother. Have a great one, my friend.
You too, Ash.
All right, guys.
Have a great one, guys.
All right.
Thank you very much, guys. You have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. I hope you really enjoyed it. These guys are phenomenal. I hope that they get a season 2. I hope to see them back. And, if they do, hopefully we'll have them back here on Monday Morning Monsters. Next week, we have Kelly and Rich from Lucy and the Lake Monster. It is a book, and it is soon to be a movie about a sighting of the Lake Champlain monster. Out in New York, Vermont area of Lake Champlain. So we're going to have them on the show next week as they're out there filming for the movie right now. And if you guys haven't checked out the Alaskan Killer Bigfoot yet, it is streaming live or streaming on Discovery Plus. You can watch all season there right now. Otherwise, on the Travel Channel on Sundays. I think this week will be the last episode of season 1. So hopefully we get to see season 2 out there. And until next time, guys, we'll see you out there.